I know we already talked a lot about Epirus, but I'm just fascinated with the subject. So how did that even pop up on your radar? What was going through your head when it started?
With Epirus when it got started?
Yeah.
So the thing we were talking about earlier is basically we realized that China was going to be an adversary, that this like crazy guy is actually communist who's coming in, that he's forcing his best and brightest to work on new ways to get us. And we said, okay, what does a war look like in the 21st century? Like, what is the warfare going to happen? And you're going to have like these massive numbers of drones is by far the best way to fight, and you're going to need ways to stop them. And so what are the most important weapons? Well, if you could have force fields, if you have the Star Trek shields, that's pretty freaking cool. And and it turns out in venture capital, there's two things, right? In venture capital, there's where's the best talent in the world, and what's possible now that wasn't possible before. We have access to the best talent. We're lucky to have that. So what's newly possible? Well, it turns out these chips are now fast enough to control power on small timescales to make our electronic warfare weapons work way better. So we said, okay, this is a really key area because we know there's new possibility here. Let's prove it out. And it was really fun because with about $30-40 million on our side, we're able to go to the desert and have a competition against guys who've raised and spent and given billions and billions by the government, tens of billions by the government for their stuff. And when the hardened drones flew, for the same size, same power, we shot down the hardened drones 9.5 times farther away.
Are you serious?
9.5 times farther away than the guys who got billions of dollars of contracts. And it's because there's these new possibilities that they didn't know how to do.
How was it developed? Where'd you guys develop this?
El Segundo, Nathan Mintz, Bomar, a bunch of guys, Andy Lowry, a bunch of really key guys on their team who, and the DNA was a combination. Like, we had the DNA from the Silicon Valley world, and we had the DNA from the electronic warfare world. So there's some people who have worked at some of these other places because there's just certain expertise that's been built up in America that no one else has, that you need to build on what already exists and build on the kind of knowledge of how gallium nitride can be worked with, as well as what's newly possible.
Is Leonidas an offensive weapon as well as a defensive weapon?
There's lots of ways. It's its core. It's a defensive thing in a sense that like you can have something protecting a city or a base or a squadron. But I mean, if you're going to be attacking the bad guys and you're going forward, you want to have these things, right? You want to have ways of stopping the drone and other attacks from getting you during an offensive. So, or by the way, you want to just turn off the area you're attacking. Imagine if there's an area you're going after and all the electronics go dead. That's probably pretty useful right before an attack. Yeah.
So what would you point the weapon at? If you wanted to take out could you take out a city?
What do you mean by that? Like, turn off the power? And
yeah.
If you turn off the power in a cone that goes, again, we're not supposed to say how far, but quite a far distance. And so you could definitely turn off an area of a town or a city, and you could move it to turn off more. Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy, right?
It is.
We used to think about this in terms of when I was a kid, you thought about like the EMP from a nuke going off in the high atmosphere. So that'd be like, that's actually a much more aggressive and scary version of these things. But this thing that can only be used once. This thing could keep being used without hurting anyone at all.
Could this take out a nuke mid-flight?
It could. So it's frying electronics. So if you think about it for satellite defense, for example, which is not what we're doing right now, but it's just me talking out of my butt. So excuse me if I get something wrong. But my bias would be that if something's targeting a satellite, it needs to be adjusting its flight in order to hit it. And so what you'd want to do with a satellite is you'd want to blast this, and you blast it a certain number of miles away. And then you could just adjust slightly, and the thing's not going to know how to hit you. Same thing, a cargo plane's a better example, probably, right? So I think if you got a big, slow cargo plane and the bad guy's trying to take it out, which is key for contested logistics, you can put one of these on it. You always see the movie where the missile's trying to follow the guy. You blast the missile, now it's a dumb missile, and then you turn, right? So there's things like that we're probably going to be doing for defending planes and things like that.
So these might be deployed on planes.
I think some version of these will definitely be deployed on planes at some point if we're going to be having battles. Now, the question is what type of planes and drones we have or use in 10 years. But yeah, you definitely want cargo planes no matter what, I think. So you definitely use them.
What other type of stuff are these things going to be deployed on? Naval ships, I would assume.
Boats, ships our company Saronic, which is building the, hopefully thousands and thousands of these smart autonomous weaponized vessels. You're going to want, that could be one of the things you put on an autonomous vessel, obviously, during a battle, is to be able to go around and turn things off with this. So I think you're going to have stuff like that too.
Are there different sizes now?
100%. So the ones that are Leonidas is a certain size, which is, takes out a certain distance, is much farther. If you wanted to, for example, this was put in an Anduril Roadrunner, if we did that kind of partnership, like that would, like there's only a small cone inside the Roadrunner. So there's only a certain amount of stuff you could put in there that might only shoot things effectively like 20 or 30 meters, for example. But that might be okay because the Roadrunner can fly up, fly next to the swarm, and shoot a bunch of times, then go back and land again. I love that video that Palmer made with the guys on that. It's such a cool weapon. So combining it with stuff like that would be great.
Man, can you go into the Roadrunner a little bit?
So I'm lucky to be an early investor in Anduril. Brian Schimpf, Trey Stevens, Matt Grimm, a bunch of our superstars from Palantir co-founded this with my friend Palmer. Palmer before had started Oculus, was the VR company, and I actually backed him at the beginning of that. He was a crazy kid, like 20, 21 years old. We met him and he had this prototype and we're like, guys, this is too crazy. Let's give him a little bit of money though. It's so impressive. And then we actually co-led the next round because it was starting to work and then Facebook bought it. And he very famously got kicked out of Facebook for being a Republican. That's a longer conversation.
What?
You know about this?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, he like put up a billboard against Hillary and was like outspoken. I mean, listen, you're all of a sudden a billionaire in your mid-20s and you have opinions and it's right in the middle of woke Silicon Valley. So this Facebook's like famously like on the other side of it. So they just attacked him like crazy and all these people were really nasty to him. A lot of people have come out from Facebook and apologized to him now because he's now like this really important leader in our country doing great things and they realize they were wrong to treat him that way. So it's like a whole saga in his life of being like beaten down and out and discarded. Not bad, he's a billionaire, you know. Just because we're talking about Palmer, I was at his wedding. He's not gonna like this, maybe. I was at his wedding and I was sitting next to like, Peter Thiel and Senator Cruz and all these people. And it's a beautiful, beautiful wedding. He's a very wealthy guy in his 20s getting married. And all of a sudden, all the music goes off and Top Gun music comes on. And then like a helicopter flies over us. Like over the wedding. And it lands behind, and Palmer's flying it. He comes out in tails and he never dresses up nicely for the wedding. The helicopter goes away and then the normal music comes back on. His wife comes in normally with her dad. But that's the kind of guy. He's hilarious.
Damn, he's awesome.
He's basically America's Iron Man. He's a hilarious inventor guy, amazing guy. So he invented all this hardware for the first real VR in America that worked. And then he partners with my Palantir guys and they start Anduril. And so Anduril has all these crazy cool products and they're running circles around the primes. They're basically like the next new prime, right? They just raised like billions of dollars at like, $15, $20 billion valuation range. And so one of their new products, which is amazing, it reminds me of Elon's rockets. It's a missile that can open up, launch, and if it's not used, it comes back and lands and waits and gets used again, which is not something that I think the generals knew to ask for. But if you think about warfare, it's all about like dollars per effectiveness. Like if you have a bunch of things attacking you, fire 50 of these things, use 10 or 20 if you need, and have the other ones come back and use them again. It's way better, right? And by the way, this thing is like a tiny fraction of the cost of similar competitive missiles.
Are you kidding me?
It's like he's literally competing against stuff that costs like, depending on what it is, $1 to $3 million. I think we're selling them for $250K now and still have much better margins than our other guys. And so it's just like, which is why you want to let people not do cost plus, because you want to have them re-engineer from scratch. What makes the most sense.
Wow.
Because if you charge someone cost plus, your job is to make it as expensive as possible because you get to keep a piece of that cost, right? But if you don't charge cost plus, then you have this whole better framework.
You had kind of mentioned that, Lockheed, Raytheon, Boeing, like these companies, the big guys, you guys are, underneath them. I mean, do you see that flipping?
Yeah, I mean, there's still some really, really amazing expertise in our military industrial base. It's like America's military industrial base that's important and that exists inside some of these primes. So I wouldn't want to say they're not going away. And we don't want them to go away. That's actually, as much as the military industrial complex, like you talked about, is an issue, you have some stuff we need to know how to do to keep America safe and to be the best in the world. And so these companies are going to be important. But in terms of anything really new and innovative, anything with really hard software, they just don't have the cultures they used to have. And they don't have the top people they used to have for most things. So it's really important that we have, Silicon Valley just got so far ahead. And it's really important we take some of that culture and apply it. And when I first wrote the check into Anduril, it was 2016, I think, I had a bunch of people who we work with in like the bio world say, we're not going to work with you anymore if you're doing defense. This is so wrong. Like you're just evil. Why would you do this stuff? Like it's just wrong to do. And a lot of fun just wouldn't even mean it. So it was like a thing you weren't supposed to do. And what's really cool is with the vibe shift, that's totally changed. You have a lot of the best people going in. It's popular now, which maybe it's too popular now, but that's another problem.
You had mentioned Facebook kicking them out because of a billboard. What do you think about Zuckerberg trying to get in with the conservative crowd? It's pretty interesting to watch 4 years ago you kicked the president off your platform. Now you want to buddy up?
Yeah,
I mean, what's going on here? Do you think
there's a lot of that going on? Listen, Zuckerberg is an interesting case. He is fundamentally himself not super political, and he himself, and I'll get a lot of flack for this, but he himself like has always had an appreciation for some of the liberty side and some of the conservative side, which is shocking given how his company does things. But like I've sat next to him not that long ago, you know, at a wedding or whatever, and he's like, you know, he's interested in his kids learning about some of these ideas. Like there's like the Tuttle twins or whatever, you know, there's like these conservative, you know, libertarian shows and stuff. I think he's open to different sides. I think the culture inside of Facebook that comes from the universities is so poisonous and so leftist that I think they get away with things sometimes that they don't even tell him about. So I'm not saying he's like a perfect good guy on this. I think he should be way bolder and hold his company accountable to stop censoring conservatives and stop doing the wrong things. So I think he's maybe a little bit soft, maybe I would say a little bit cowardly sometimes about these things, despite being amazing in other areas. But he himself is not really a driver of that. And you know what happens to a lot of these guys, maybe I'd say he started off moderate left, but with an appreciation for both sides. And he'll start like a foundation. It's called the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, CZI. And what'll happen with these moderate leftists is they're not good at keeping out like the crazy far left. And so his philanthropy org becomes run by these activists. Okay. And he's busy with his business. And like his wife and him, I guess, don't want fights or whatever. So you get these crazy activists and they just start doing terrible stuff. And they're very good at like sounding maybe to him like, oh, it's a reasonable thing. It's not actually affecting things. But when you saw it actually changed the 2020 election, the way they put the hundreds of millions of dollars to work. My guess is he didn't even understand or might not even still understand how much they would screw things up. Which is not an excuse for him, but I think that's just the reality of how these orgs evolve, you know, with these crazy activists inside of them.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So you're basically saying he wasn't necessarily the catalyst, but he
wasn't the George Soros. He's not George Soros. He wasn't like doing the crazy bad stuff himself. I think in general, Silicon Valley, people who are moderate on the moderate left have been way too tolerant of letting these crazy activists take over their companies, take over their philanthropies, and break things. And if we want to fix our country with this vibe shift, we need these guys to get balls. We need these guys to have a little more boldness, a little more courage, and they need to come out publicly and like excise these parts of their orgs and say, you know what? I was way too tolerant of that. There's 47 people I just fired because they were all found to be doing this crazy stuff, censoring conservatives, turning things down, screwing with them, shadow banning them. We're not going to let them do that anymore. Like that's what he needs to do. And he can still be on the moderate left if he wants, but you can't freaking tolerate these crazy activists, man. Anyway, that's what I would tell him. I haven't caught up with them in a bit.
I mean, you're obviously a major player in tech as well. So, I mean, how have you kept that rot out of your companies?
Yeah, you got to be really disciplined how you hire. You got to be really fast to fire. And by the way, I work with a ton of people who are on the left, on the right. Like this is not about left versus right. This is about the activists. This is about the crazy kind of woke, like cancel culture, liberal people. And as soon as you see that, like, you can't tolerate it.
Do you build culture under your companies?
You have to. You have to have CEOs who, I mean, you set the tone by how hard the top's working. You set the tone by the values and principles we talk about. One of the values of AVC is patriotism. You know, you have to explicitly have these values and say this is what we stand for. This is who we are. We're principled optimists. We're patriots. We're going to fight for the truth. And you know, you want to live in a world. I think the vibe shift that we've been talking about is like a lot of people are comfortable living with lives safely, and I think it's important that a lot of people come over to live with the truth, even if it's dangerous.
That's a great way to put it. Back to the future of warfare. I mean, what are some things that other countries are getting involved in that concern you?
Well, I mean, I think the fact that we let China and Russia become such close allies is ridiculous. I think that was a huge strategic mistake. And I think they're not necessarily natural allies. I think that was something where we drove into each other. So that concerns me. I think the biggest concern right now is Turkey. And on top of that,
Turkey.
Yeah, so Russia and China obviously the biggest concern, Iran obviously, but Turkey is like the biggest kind of wild card going on right now. So Turkey, you know, Ataturk created Turkey as the first really successful secular Muslim country in the modern world. And it was a really big deal. And there's a lot of problems historically with Islamists, today with Islamists. So he built all these institutions into Turkey to stop the Islamists from taking over because he knew that would always be a threat. And one of the most important institutions was the army, to make sure that Islamists did not run it, and that his job was to fight and stop Islamists if they were going to take over society. And Erdogan knew this. Erdogan we thought, a lot of us thought, when I was a kid, but I thought he was a moderate when he came in 20 years ago. That's how he ran. But he's secretly like very strongly on the Islamist side. And so in order to make the Islamists win again in Turkey, you had to take out these organizations in society that had been built to stop Islamists. And so when he did the coup 8 years ago, a lot of us believe, and a lot of intelligence agencies believe, it was purposely tripped off as a coup in order to get all these people to come up and see who's going to be anti-Islamist and then wipe them out. And so what happened in society is he ended up like killing and torturing tens of thousands of people 8 years ago when this happened. Anyone who was going to be against Islamists, anyone who was kind of built in to stop that. And so those people were all eliminated. The people in the army who were against Islamists were all eliminated. And so for the first time, all of Ataturk's protections are gone. So now you have this like very Islamist leader who's very pro-Islamist, and he just like with his forces conquered Syria because of what's going on in the Middle East for Islamists. He also now is wiping out by reportedly huge numbers of Kurds. Like you can go look online. I think a lot more Kurds have died in the last month than people in Gaza have died this entire last year. And you're not hearing protests about it, because there's no Jews involved, but it's like, it's crazy. They're just killing off the Kurds. And by the way, a lot of the Kurds were close allies with a lot of my friends in the special forces who had to deal with stuff over there. They were our friends.
Yeah.
And they don't have a country, which I think they should. A lot of their territories inside Turkey, a lot of it's inside of Iraq, a lot of it's inside of Syria. And they're the Islamist enemy. The Islamists don't want these guys to have their own country. And so he's wiping a bunch of them out. And I'm very scared what Turkey does next. Turkey has nuclear weapons, because it's in NATO. It's a wild card. Like, are they going to go after and help the Islamists like take out the Jordanian king? I don't know, but there's like lots of really scary things. So I think Iran's on the run. We need to finish off the whole story with Iran, but now there's this other Islamist threat there that's a wild card we're going to be dealing with and figuring out. It's pretty scary to me.
Shit, that wasn't even on my radar. What about technology? Are you worried about, is China developing anything that you're aware of that we should be concerned about, or does Russia have any technology that they overplayed their hand? Maybe.
China has a bunch of advanced new technology in all sorts of areas, whether it's hypersonics, whether it's massive numbers of submarines, whether it's all sorts of new projects they're working on that I'm sure I don't even know about. All sorts of things. They're trying to copy SpaceX. Thank God we have SpaceX and they don't, but they're trying to copy it. I don't know if you see the videos that blows up when they try, but they're going to get there eventually, probably. Because Elon's really smart, but we have a really great program, but eventually they catch up and they do things in space, which scares me. What am I scared by? I'm scared by the space stuff, to tell you the truth. I really hope. It's very funny. Everyone's like, don't weaponize space, don't weaponize space. And I agree. I don't want there to be wars in space. It would screw up a lot of stuff for the world. At the same time, if someone else weaponizes space and we don't, we're kind of screwed.
I have no insight into what's going on in space.
So I don't have any clearances around this, and so I might piss people off talking about it, but I'm not cleared, so I'm just going to go ahead and tell you a few things. But like the number one thing I'd say, there's a natural network effect in space where it's very cheap. Like for the cost of one aircraft carrier, you can put up probably 150,000 things up there that you can accurately drop on people within 1 meter. And they're much, much cheaper than missiles. And so you basically, and if someone does that and no one else does it, then like the person who has that first, you can never launch a rocket again, because it's very easy to see if a rocket's being launched and you can just take it out. So there's a network effect that really scares me, that if there was going to be a war, whoever conquers and whoever has stuff up there first that's really good could probably stop the other guy from getting stuff up there. And I don't want stuff exploding in space, but like it's just such a powerful thing to own for any future battle that we need to be thinking about it. I think some people are thinking about it. I'm not sure our budget reflects that we're thinking about it enough. By the way, this is why a lot of us were usually in favor of Space Force behind the scenes, and really glad that President Trump started that. It's obvious you need a Space Force. Because it's like, we're talking about how warfare changes, like the space thing is a scary angle.
Wow. Is there anything else that you're aware of going on? That's fascinating in itself.
That's a big one. The other thing in general is that I guess I'm most afraid of is that China has about 200 times our shipbuilding capacity, if you want to say. And I think you probably talked about this before. In World War II, you get these I had this cool painting at my house in Montana, or ski house, of these American ships hunting down a German warship and taking it out. But we needed multiple ships to do it, because the German battleships were actually better than ours, I think. Mm-hmm. And now America ships are destroyers, not battleships anymore, but American destroyers, everything else, they're way more advanced than Chinese. But if someone has 200 times your capacity, that's really scary, because eventually have a bunch of them hunted down, right? And so the question is, what the heck do we do? We need to get our capacity up. So my friends and I started this company, Saronic. We're going to hopefully build 500 ships in Austin next year, working with a bunch of the admirals, a bunch of the best people in the Navy. We're teaching them how to use AI to have like swarms of these weaponized vessels, and how they can work together with the fleet, and how we could eventually have thousands of these in any kind of mission or battle scenario. Because that's really what you want. Because for the cost of one big ship, By the way, all of our shipyards are delayed. They're all behind. It's pathetic. They're all run by administrators and turbulent relations. So this Navy is just like way behind and broken. So we need to have an alternate path to help create, thousands of these ships that deter the bad guys.
That space thing blows my mind. I mean, if that happens, or we're not up there already, and with that 1 meter thing. I mean, when you had mentioned, you could stop anything else from coming up there. I mean, that right there that's global domination.
Yeah, but we really don't want there to be war in space, because it may be the case that you start just blowing up certain things. They figure out how to get missiles or whatever and to blow up certain things, and then you have lots of junk up there, and then it's just a giant mess. And I think Starlink's really good for the world. I don't hopefully no one destroys all this shit.
Wow, that's fascinating. Let's go into Saronic.
Mm-hmm. That's what we were just talking about. Exactly. The reason this is so important, man, is that there's no interfaces right now for controlling one-to-many that actually work, right? So do you ever play StarCraft or Warcraft when you were a kid, right?
Oh yeah.
And so there needs to be modern AI-enabled versions of this. One of my friends is a really impressive video game guy who built Riot Games with League of Legends and stuff. There's tons of really great American talent around there. And so part of what we need to be doing is iterating on and practicing on what interfaces work for these things. Because right now, if you have a drone, there's 5 guys flying one drone in the Middle East, which is fine for that project. It's not going to work for a battle with thousands of these ships. If you have a hellscape, it needs to be some AI. I still want people in charge, but the AI needs to be augmenting them, right, and helping them. Just the same way your troops were in your Warcraft game.
And you are involved in so many things. How about Anduril? Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, so Anduril the one that Palmer Luckey, who got kicked out of Facebook, and my 3-pounder colleagues started. And it's doing the Roadrunner we talked about.
Oh.
It's doing a bunch of other great stuff. It's a really important company.
What do you think about Neuralink?
I think it's cool. I think, what actually is really neat is a bunch of the talent for Neuralink's moved to Austin, where we are. So, a lot of this tech talent, and people have shifted out of California. And so a lot of the head people are there. And, they're making amazing progress. There's probably all sorts of things you can do with Neuralink eventually with people who are paralyzed, fix that with back pain, it's a little bit scary if you really get a high bandwidth into your brain, maybe see what's going on. I don't know. How much do I want to know everything about that,
I mean, does that worry you at all?
Well, I would say I trust Elon and the people working on it, but in general, having companies have access directly into the brains of huge numbers of people, if it spreads to be a thing that lots of people are touching, that is a little bit of a scary kind of concept. If you can kind of, overall, it's really positive, right? Overall, for the near term, 100%. I think there's guys, I couldn't even imagine. I'm claustrophobic. I don't know about you. I don't like being stuck in a small space. Imagine if you're paralyzed and all you do is blink your eyes. Yeah. And there's guys who are literally getting this thing, and suddenly they're able to effectively communicate, play games, do all these things that otherwise they were trapped in their head. I mean, this is it's like God's gift for a huge number of people. So it's like, is it a good thing? 100% it's a good thing. But sure, if we're going to speculate 30 years from now where society can go if we're all plugged into our brains, we got to make sure that crazy things don't happen, obviously.
Yeah, I read something a couple weeks ago saying that it's helping blind people potentially see.
100%. There's all sorts of these amazing things you could do with this. So I think for people who have issues or are injured, and it may even be, like Elon said, at some point for a really bad back pain or something, you could just adjust it and stuff. So there's lots of really, really, I think we're going towards a golden age. It's really positive. I think whenever there's these positive things, there's always some negative possibilities. And it doesn't mean we should stop doing the positive things, but we should just keep those in mind and do our best to make sure we avoid them.
Yeah, yeah.